Well, someone's got to say it, so it might as well be me. Let's talk about some harsh truths. You know, one of the things that I think we get wrong today, I mean, there are a lot of them, but is the inability to have conversations about the hard things, the harsh realities of whatever topic it is that we want to discuss. And I get it, because we all want to have positive, uplifting conversations, but sometimes we need to talk about the tough stuff, because those things, when we don't talk about them, they don't go away. So today I want to talk about 5 harsh truths related to travel, things that often get overlooked and overshadowed, things that you probably don't want to hear. So people don't necessarily want to engage in conversation about them, but things that are part of it no matter what. You know, we can pretend that it doesn't exist, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to run into these things when we're out and about trying to explore the world and do the things that we want to do. So buckle in, because I want to run through these with you. And look, because some of this isn't going to sit well with some of you, I'm going to ask you to just hang in there with me, okay? And think about how you might be able to apply some of these things to your situation. You don't necessarily have to plug and play everything that I'm talking about, but what can you take from this and make work for you? Okay? So, with that, let's jump in. Number 1, all trips have structure. Hold on, Willa. We'll wait for that helicopter to go by. It's kind of loud. You know, one of the things that I hear a lot, every time I have conversations about going places, it doesn't really matter where we're talking about or what we're talking about doing. It's this want for there to be less structure to that trip. Again, doesn't matter the destination, doesn't matter the nature of the trip. People would rather not have to do a ton of planning. They would rather not have to do any research at all.
So what's the plan? Plan? There ain't no plan!
This has been a topic that has led to some, let's call them heated discussions over the years, you know, where people have an idea of what they want when it comes to going places and doing things. And while that's fantastic, it's not necessarily consistent with reality. You know, it's not necessarily doable in the way that they want it to be doable so that they can achieve what they're looking to achieve, which for most people who are looking for trips that don't have a ton of structure tends to be like carefree, stress-free, just kind of go with the flow type of thing, which is great. You know, that's wonderful. But that's not what happens when you have a trip that is structure-free. Okay. In reality, all trips have structure. No matter where you're going, what you're doing, there are structural elements to that vacation, to that trip, to those travels. You know, there are things like flight schedules and check-in, check-out times at the hotel or whatever accommodations you're choosing. That time you have to return the rental car by, or visa status and limitations and all of that stuff. If you're traveling overseas, things like hours of operation, local laws and regulations, all of these things are structural elements that are part of every trip, whether you like it, whether you acknowledge it or not. And you know, I've heard it all over the years. I've heard a lot of people say things like, well, just, you know, be nice and people will give you what you're looking for. That is definitely not the case. I don't even know if that was ever the case, but it's certainly not the guarantee that I think people think it is. Certainly not the guarantee that I think people want to believe that it is. And I think that that ends up having a lot more people a lot more frustrated than they need to be, because they just didn't take the time to do the research and look into the thing that they want to do like they should have. They didn't prepare accordingly. And look, I know it sucks to hear, but the fact of the matter is you can't carefree or tip your way out of piss poor planning. You actually have to prepare. You have to take the time to do the research. Look into things. See if that hotel you're planning on grabbing lunch at is even going to be open on Tuesdays. Or what time you can check into that hotel so you don't have to worry about lugging your bags around. You can't just expect things to bend to your will because you didn't want to do the research ahead of time. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that you can't go the route of just, picking a point on the map, booking a ticket and going. That is something that you definitely can do, but there are consequences to going that way. You know, there are sacrifices that need to be made. And what that ultimately looks like is the willingness for you to bend, bob, weave, and ultimately do all the research, do the legwork on the fly, which for some people is going to be fantastic. It can be a lot of fun for the right type of traveler. But if you don't want to do the research ahead of time, you don't want to trip with any structure because you're looking for things to be laid back and carefree, going that route is going to be the wrong choice for you. Number 2, itinerary isn't a 4-letter word. Oh, I know, I can feel it right through the screen. You are not liking that we're talking about itineraries so soon, especially when I said everything I did about having a structure-free trip. I think itineraries have a bad rap. I really do. I think that there are a lot of people out there who have seen the movies and the TV shows and heard the horror stories. Maybe they've even been a victim of that one control freak in their family that treats an itinerary like some sort of checklist in a hostage situation. And they will be damned if they are going to be stuck to a schedule when they're trying to escape their day-to-day schedule. But here's the thing, okay? An itinerary is a tool. It can be a really useful tool. It can solve a lot of really easy to solve and common problems that a lot of people run into, especially those people who probably want to have less structure because they're looking for a stress-free, carefree trip. An itinerary, believe it or not, can be a great tool for achieving that, but you have to use it right. You have to build it appropriately as well. The way I see things, an itinerary is like a paper brain. It's all the information that you want or need to keep track of while you're traveling in one place so that you don't have to count on yourself to keep track of it, especially if you're covering long distances or if you're doing a ton of things in even a short span of time, or if you're someone who gets overwhelmed rather easily.
I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time processing information right now.
We took sleeping pills.
Just make your way over to gate 32.
Okay. Wow.
Is traveling with a large group. Like, there are a number of scenarios in which an itinerary can be a useful tool that is, again, going to get you where you want to go with a lot more ease and a lot less stress than you're probably dealing with trying to keep track of it in your head already. Now look, if you're interested in me going through the process of building and showing you how to use an itinerary in a way that feels a lot less like shackles and a lot more like that reminder that gives you all the right information exactly when you need it, let me know in a comment down below. But what I like to do, just kind of as a brief overview, is I like to have all of the information about where I'm going, things like addresses or places that I really wanted to grab a bite to eat, just listed in the appropriate order on a sheet of paper. Sometimes it's handwritten, sometimes I write it up in my phone, sometimes I print it out, if I'm feeling fancy, along with any other information that I might be likely to forget about. Maybe that must do that keeps slipping my mind, put it on the itinerary on the appropriate day. Am I supposed to check in for my flight? Is there something I'm supposed to do on a particular day that I might forget about? Pop it in the itinerary. And what that does is gives me something, a reference point to look at maybe at the start and end of my day to just get my bearings on where it is that I'm going, what it is that I'm doing. Is there anything I need to accomplish before I wrap up my day? When built and executed appropriately, it actually allows you to turn off your brain. So you're not in a constant state of, what was that thing I needed to remember? Wait, where are we going next? It's all right here on a sheet of paper. We can just glance at it and we're back on track. There are a few other things that building an itinerary is really useful for as well. For the planning process, especially if you're doing something like a road trip or you're covering a lot of ground, this can be a good way to organize time and just get a reference of how long it's going to take you to get from wherever you're starting to wherever you're going, even if you don't stick to it, which you don't have to.
Contains everything they want you to know about your aircraft.
Being able to go, okay, so if we leave around this time, we'll arrive around that time, can prevent you from making some really silly and honestly time-consuming mistakes. This is something that we actually ran into very recently when we were pulling together plans for an upcoming trip. We know where we're headed, we know where we want to go, and the general time frame of how long it's going to take us to go to all of those places. But when we were thinking about like when we want to head to dinner and how long we're actually going to spend in that particular area, we had thought it would only take an hour or two. But I said, you know what, let's pull it all together. Let's, make a route and see what it's actually going to look like. And it's more like 5 hours that we want to spend in this place. If we had planned something else to move on, maybe to check in at a hotel in a completely different state or something like that, we might have screwed ourselves out of some of the experiences that we really wanted to have. So building an itinerary allows us to just get a sense of what that time actually looks like. Even if we don't stick to that, even if we change up our route or decide to change course, we at least have the appropriate amount of time allotted, which can be a really helpful tool, again, especially if you're covering a lot of distance or have a long list of things that you want to accomplish. Another thing that no one ever talks about when it comes to having an itinerary, but I have a lot of personal experience with, is if you have family or friends that are going to want to check in on you repeatedly and you want to unplug, you don't want to constantly have to be checking your phone to tell everyone you're okay, having an itinerary is a great way to give them an idea of where you're going to be and when, and schedule in check-in times with those people who are likely to text you 85,000 times a day.
You don't talk enough! Bad boy, I kill you, I put you in jail! I love you so much.
I cannot tell you how nice this was to have a designated check-in time so that people knew when to expect a call, and I didn't have to field a number of, you haven't checked in a couple hours, phone calls as I was driving, 10, 15 hours at a stretch across the United States. So yeah, believe it or not, it is a huge help when you're trying to unplug, even if you want to avoid it because what you want to do is unplug.
Consider this a grand gesture of my love.
What are you... Oh my God! What did you do? Phil, what are you thinking? That is an expensive cell phone.
It's just the beginning.
Number 3, short form content is a shitty way to get travel information. Look, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you. I know. Short form content, it scratches an itch. It kills a ton of time. It's like the algorithm gods know me personally. So they send me the videos that I want to see, which is wild. And that makes discovery and just learning new things about new places so easy. It's completely changed the landscape. Let's be real. But here's the thing about short form content, which I say as someone who also posts short form content, right? I'm part of the problem. If you're looking for information, not just a spark of an idea, but actual information, short form content is not the place to find it.
Where's the poop, Robin? Excuse me?
The dirty little secret of short form content is that it's not about you. It's about the algorithm. It's about saying the thing that's going to get the views. And sometimes that means exaggerating the truth. Sometimes it means flat out lying. And sometimes it's neither. But it is reposted old stuff because that's also something that people do. They'll take an old video and they'll post it again 2 years later, hoping that it'll have the same level of success that it had the first time around. And by that point, the information is probably out of date and not as useful to you as you need it to be. Look, come here for this one. While short form content can be a fantastic tool, it can be a great starting point, you should not take it at face value. You need to do your research. If there's something you see, you gotta look into it. Because otherwise, you're gonna find yourself screwed because that 30-second clip did not tell you all the information you needed. I know, sounds crazy that 30 seconds isn't enough, but it's true. Look, there's just too much nuance, and travel is too high stakes to trust a little blip that you see online. Even when it comes to things like restaurants, especially with short form content, it gets kind of icky because there are a lot of people who use that as a way to market and advertise their businesses. This is where the whole market for influencers comes in. And that can sometimes paint a picture that isn't really an accurate picture. Just take the time. Because scrolling and saving and figuring out whatever it is that you need to figure out in the wild about this thing that may not even be true is not a good plan. Certainly not if you're counting on it. Yeah, definitely don't do that. Use it as a jumping off point, but little more than that. Number 4, the kindness of others is never a solution you should rely on. So here's a little something about me that you just might not know. I actually believe that there are a lot of really good people out there. I believe that most people are good, actually. And I don't say that because I've never had situations to prove otherwise, because I've had my fair share of really shitty situations in my lifetime. But I think overall, most people aim to be, or straight up are good, especially when it really counts. But still, I feel very firmly that your plan for success, when it comes to something that you need, should never rely on the kindness of others. Let me give you an example, okay? Just in case you're not getting the picture. This is one that I see all the time. It's always on my feed. Booking like the window and the aisle seat on an airplane with maybe it's your partner, the person that you're traveling with, or maybe you have a kid that is currently sitting on your lap, but you really need them to have that seat, and you're just crossing your fingers, saying a little prayer to the airline gods that the kindness of others will result in you getting a free seat for your little one, or the kindness of others will result in you being able to sit next to your honey bun. Now, I know this is going to ruffle some feathers, so brace yourself, but if you really want that seat, you should select that seat when you book your tickets. And if you really need that seat for your little one, for example, you need to pay for that seat. You need to buy that seat. I know, well, I can't afford the seat. Well, then you can't afford to do the trip right now. Harsh truths. I also think, I know this might be another hot take, but if you're quick to go to social media to rant and rave about someone's unwillingness to bend to your will, then it was never really about saving the money.
Boom! Lawyered.
Finally, last but not least, number 5 on our list, it's 2026. Or whatever year you're watching this, if you're watching in the future. Things cost more now. This is another one of those things that comes up every now and again when we talk about like having the right mindset if you're going to choose to travel. And let me say, I totally get it. Yes, the economy. Ugh. And I get it. I mean, look, I'm here with you. I'm paying for gas. I'm buying eggs. I'm paying rent. And I fully acknowledge that there are times in my life, there have been seasons where I have been in a tougher space financially than I am right now. That's life. There are ebbs and flows, and like things change, and even so, things could change in the snap of a finger for either of us. It's part of it. But I think that there's a fine line between acknowledging so that we can adapt and overcome that thing, and bitching despite the fact that we're going to do it anyway. I also think another kind of reality check that some people need, I know another harsh truth, just laying them on today, it was in the title, to be fair, is that it's easy to fall into the trap of comparing dollar for dollar pricing back from like 30, 40 years ago compared to today, as though inflation hasn't played a role, and as though a dollar back in 1980 is worth $1 today. That's not how things work. And I know people don't tend to want to get into the nitty-gritty of that, but I do think that there's a lot of unnecessary outrage that comes from things like that, from choosing to cherry pick just the right pieces of information so that we can bitch louder and longer about other things that might not be as big a deal as they seem when we frame them in the appropriate way. So I'm gonna toss that out there as well. But at the end of the day, like there are two choices here. We can accept what things cost in 2026 and do what we need to do in order to adapt to the price of that. Maybe we save up for longer. Maybe we change the way we travel. We stay in a more affordable hotel, or we, go with a different airline, or we just don't go, which is the other option. And yeah, that option sucks. I'm not suggesting that it doesn't, but again, you only got 2 choices here, so pick one and commit. So there you go, 5 harsh truths about travel. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you have done any of these things before. Have you ever found yourself in heated discussions because of these things before? Yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And if you have any travel plans in the future, let me know where you're planning on going, and if you are going to try out any of these things or try to avoid any of them. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day. See you guys soon.